And of course there was a situation that was not good from the start. I mean, we saw that before. We saw that when the Soviet Empire crumbled, we saw the basic instincts and xenophobic and instincts to go to the fore. It happened the same thing with the former Yugoslavia, that suddenly everybody started killing anybody else.
Fight each other, yeah.
Exactly. So this was a bit predictable that this could happen in Iraq as well, because the dictatorship was keeping the things more or less, I mean, stable in relative terms, but this problem could arise. But mainly, the West invited the number one promoter of fanaticism in the Greater Middle East, which is Iran, to take care of Iraq, and therefore the results.
How come? You mean when the Khomeini turned to Iran and thrown the Shah regime, 79, actually 1979, yes.
Yes, it was.
And
January 79.
yeah, and we can see that, as you mentioned earlier, Iran went backwards several hundred years in spite of democracy, if you want to see it like that. But also for the other ethnic groups like the Christians, there were several 100,000 Christians in Iran before, and sometimes you could hear them. Now it's totally quiet about them. No one's there to mention them.
And heavily persecuted in Iran, heavily persecuted. I accompanied some cases of Christians being persecuted in Iran.
How come that when these Muslim groups, every time they get possibility, they oppress their nearest neighbors, the Christians, in living in there? If they have some problems with the West, why do they attack their Christian neighbors? I mean, we can see that in Pakistan, the Christians are treated as the lowest, dirtiest individuals. In Iran, they are going on same direction. We can see Turkey that they tried to extinguish the Christianity from Turkey during the First World War. They were almost to be successful on that. If I put the question on this way, sometimes I connect the present situation to what happened 19 years ago, and during the First World War, what did happen in Turkey in general and southeast Turkey in particular, when the Christians was, I said, a measure to be extinguished from the face of, not earth, but the face of the nation that called Turkey. And the West and the world community didn't react. They didn't stop it. They didn't follow it, and they didn't condemn really those who did it. And we can see that nothing happened. And I believe that the present situation are connected to this thinking that, well, we can persecute the Christians, we can't kill them, they will talk them and mention it, but they will not do anything about it. And therefore, also the lack of democracy, the lack of freedom and respect of human rights for those Christian groups. And as I see it, the Syriac Aramean people, for instance, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Turkey, we know that for only 100 years ago, we were maybe not a majority, but we were a big minority. And now we are a fading minority. How can we make these people, first, to stay in Middle East, though there is the present situation and maybe it will be worse? And the second question is, how can we help them and make their voice be heard from Middle East? We as Syrian Arameans in the diaspora, we can't talk for us. We have the freedom, they have the possibility. But those who are living in Middle East, in Iraq, in Turkey, in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Syria, everywhere in Middle East, How can we help them to make their voice heard, so when they are persecuted, we can say, we will talk for you? What do you think, Mr. Casaca?
No, I think that we must have a strategy for democratization on the Middle East. This is not a simple thing to do. It is obviously not going to be done just because you wait for it to happen, or it's not going to happen also if you just think on a military coup to depose a dictator, as Iraq was a clear example. But I think that the most important thing is for Europe to have, and for the West in general, to have a different attitude. I mean, this is the big problem. I see that, for instance, regarding Israel, it is appalling what I see. I see that the things are turned upside down. I see that, for instance, I was just commenting this a while ago. A couple of days ago, I was sent by the Israeli embassy a photograph of a missile being launched from a schoolyard in Gaza to Israel. And of course, the meaning of this is obvious. They wanted the automatic reply, because they normally, the Israel replies with a very soon, very immediate. They wanted Israel to hit the school and to have the news again. Well, Israel is killing children. And this is because nobody ever said from the beginning, when this was starting to happen, that the terrorists are killing the children by launching missiles. This is so obvious. Everybody should have understood it. But if you would watch the BBC, for instance, BBC was perhaps one of the most partisan, anti-Israel media that I saw during the last war. I mean, Al Jazeera was a bit more objective than BBC. I mean, the BBC went over what Al Jazeera could do, and you would see this turned upside down. I mean, the victim becoming the aggressor, and the aggressor becoming the victim. I mean, with this type of attitude, there is no way that we are going to reach whatever, because whenever there is, well, just to give another example that is quite obvious, speaking about Arabs, the last time I heard the litany from the Iranian ambassador about Israel and the poor Palestinians, I just told him, which is quite obvious. I mean, your own Arabs, the Ahwazis that live in Iran, they would love to be treated like the Israelis treat the Palestinians. Which is true, which is obvious. But then again, nobody says that. If you look to the press, when do you see a news of the repression of ethnic cleansing, for instance? They do ethnic cleansing. They are taking out the Arabs from what they consider to be strategic points and filling it, these areas with people that they think that are more Persians or whatever, that they think that are more pliable to their will. And actually there are, or at least there were, nearly 4 million Arabs in this in Ahvaz, as many as there are Palestinians. But why did you never see a single line about that in the media? This type of attitude, which is a bit difficult to understand. It is an attitude that is demagogic. It is an attitude that goes after the masses. That is, as the bulk of the masses are Islamic and Arabs, and if there is something done in Palestine, oh, there will be a big commotion and there will be demonstrations. Okay, then the West, oh, that's important. And as the other way around, it doesn't happen. People don't care, because the most of the economic power, the oil and so on, are in these places. So, if we do not have principles when we look to the Middle East, there is no solution. there will be never a solution, because we will be always looking the other way when a minority will be massacred, be it Christian or be it the Arabs that are in Iran, for instance. The situation is not very different.